Hello and welcome to the STCfit podcast. I'll be your host today. My name's Nat Jurek, and with me I'll be joined by Ben Scott and Jason Galea. STCfit are a group of coaches who provide premium coaching and education services to high-achieving women who want to ditch the frustration and achieve the results they want when they want. On the podcast, we'll be discussing all things related to our 5-step method to experiencing total clarity in knowing how to achieve your goals, present and future. The podcast is brought to you by STCfit for all your online and personal training needs. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a share and tag at Nat Jurek STCfit, at Ben Scott STC, and at Jason Galea _STC. Hope you enjoy the show.
Like I've said 100,000 times, but I'm going to mention on the podcast so it's official. I really like this rug.
I really like this rug too.
Is there any more additions coming to the studio? Every time I come here, I feel like there's something new. Wow. I like it.
It's all coming together.
I like how one picture I saw there was a plant, and then the other one I saw there was books, and then when I come in next, there's like a plant on a book.
I feel like we've got to move them and like put one
I love
aside.
It was... Just if you saw the pictures, it's like this is what
Ben's really been like thinking about what needs to
Someone
go.
Just
in the
went
middle
like,
of the table.
why not have both? And then everyone's like, oh yeah.
No, it's literally my first time in here. So
yeah,
the chair,
cool.
I like the chair.
The chair's
That's
grouse.
my favorite part because
this could go for a while because it's really comfy.
Yeah, it's so easy to just like sit here and talk.
Yeah, it's a very very conducive space to chatting. So.
And it's a lot better than the big. Like the couch chair that we had, where I was like, I don't know where my legs go,
or even like how to face
go.
you.
Yeah,
I've been podcasting for years now. Like years, sound old.
Veteran.
And we've never had a space this good. Like it's always just been like awkward, and then we like did like Zoom, where I was just at home, so that was cool because it was comfy, but like it looked shit.
Yeah.
So this is like.
Next
Really
level.
taking it,
really
taking it up a notch. So watch it on YouTube, guys. That's what
I
I'm trying
know.
to say. Hey, our last one got like, maybe 3-4 times the views already.
Wow.
So it's like aesthetics matters.
Yeah, it does.
So you don't want to see my ugly face.
Or just like look at us on Zoom.
Yeah, that's it. Because it's just the speaker like view. It's just your fucking head. Like it's my big fat
The reels,
head.
when the reels are so close up.
I laugh all the time because like obviously my setup at home is like, I'm in a bedroom, it's an office, but it's like, and the way I've got the screen set up, like I'm already a bit close. And then,
did you change it?
Nah, it's...
Oh, no, it must be the
camera.
Or even the new thing that you're using, because you're not using Loom anymore.
Oh, yeah, so that's a different... I don't know how, but it's like, it's not as zoomed. Or,
I saw it on Monday and I was like, I like this.
That software is fucking 10 times better than Loom.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. Yeah, without this obviously.
Okay.
That's way better. Because you can put the funny, I don't know whose video it was, but I started dropping like emojis all over the page. I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I paid for it. Like, I'm never going to be like, heart eyes emoji, like well done here.
Clap.
Oh yeah. So what's been going on? I haven't seen you.
I haven't seen anyone.
Yeah, true. I haven't seen you for like at least 5 weeks. I reckon.
I know. Yeah. Well, probably since our Christmas party.
Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah.
So that was
because I haven't really done anything
week before Christmas.
Well, for those of you who don't know, I got COVID, so I've been
one of the unlucky ones. I feel like you got the. I feel like you got the. Yeah, I just feel like you got like the
worst,
the hard hitting one.
Yeah, it was a nightmare. Well, so before we went away the first week of January, but that's when everything started like turning to shit around here, and we really wanted to go away. So we're like, let's just stay home. Like and isolate before we go. Yeah. So we kind of didn't really leave the house much. Like we trained, went for a walk, like didn't really do anything other than that. Yeah. 3 days into Queensland and we copped it so badly. Like I have never been that sick. Like just headache, like fever, like body aches. Yeah, it was a nightmare. And then obviously we came back and we isolated in my room for, I think it was like 5 days. And by day 5, I was like a nervous wreck. Like I was like, I need to get out of this room. So we just like got an Airbnb and just stayed somewhere and finished off our last few days, smart. And that was it. So
yeah. I feel like I did the complete opposite. Like I told myself like, I'm 10 days from when we leave, I'm not going anywhere. And then I was like, I was at the SB, I was going out with the boys, we went barefoot bowls and drinking in the city. And then every night it was like, hey, you want to go do this? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like,
So
it was just out every day. And then,
So
got there and back. I'm like, am I just like one of those people that's just like, it's kind of hit me, but I've just, my immune system's gone like, no. Well, I don't know. There's been a couple of times where I'm like,
do I have it?
I have a headache.
Like, yeah, because you start getting hyper paranoid.
Oh man, bad. Even when we did our the rapid thing, I was like shaking and shit. I had to do it on my birthday as well. So I was like sitting there and I'm like, did I do it properly? And I was like, fuck it, man. What will be, will be.
I know.
Is what it is.
I was like, we probably had it by now. Like, just didn't have the symptoms. And then when it came, I'm
definitely
like,
have not.
I've fucking had it. It's like a different type of pain. Like,
Yeah,
it is so fucked. So
yeah, I feel really bad. Like, seeing you firsthand, I'm like, okay, this is a thing, and it can be.
That's the thing. Like, I kept saying, I don't want to like start this conversation, but I'm like, if we weren't vaxxed, like, fucking God knows how we would have felt, because we felt like shit as it was. So, like, it just makes you think. But yeah, that was kind of my holidays.
Okay.
So
have you got back into training yet?
This week. So I trained yesterday for the first time. So I did my testing week, and like, I felt like shit. Like, it was just really hard. Like, I think I dropped my chest press back 10 kilos, and by the second set, halfway through the second set, I was like, I can't do anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I need to stop. And like, I've woken up today and like, I've got like a little bit of DOMS, and I'm like, that's fucked. Like,
oh yeah,
it's ridiculous. But we haven't really trained properly in about 4 weeks. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Have you had a look at the year goals wise for training and stuff? Like, is that something that we've unpacked yet?
Yeah. Well, obviously, like, we were dieting before we came into Christmas, and like had some plans to finish that off. But at this point, I'm kind of just like, get to a point where I feel good.
Get back in the gym. And
then I do want to continue dieting. So I think I've got about 6 or 7 kilos I want to lose.
Yeah.
Get to about 60, under 60 would be cool to see. And then maybe some more strength focused goals towards the end of the year. So starting to think about that.
Ben's going to be happy.
He will be happy. I know I've kind of been put off it for a little bit, but it's kind of like I saw some videos of like myself like heavy squatting and deadlifting, and I was like, I'm kind of got the itch a little bit, but not right now. Like, I'm starting
to get some curiosity. I don't want to power lift, but I just want to see how strong I can get.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, I have to train like a powerlifter, and it's like, I don't know if I want to do that. So.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, I think I will want to, like, eventually at some point this year. Not right now. I still haven't started my program that I got for you that I'm like so fucking excited to start.
Yeah.
And it's like the total opposite of what I normally like. So
yeah, that's gonna be savage too, because it was like building upon the other one. But anyway, we work it out.
Yeah. How about you? Have you thought about your goals?
Yeah, we spoke about them on the. So obviously I'll be repeating myself on the other podcast, but some people don't listen to that one, so it's all good. So yeah, like, I want to get to 10% body fat, probably float between 88 and 92 kilos. I feel like any bigger than that, it's just like I compromise to my life. I just start to feel like shit, sleep poorly. Can't play golf well. So yeah, that'll be cool. I want to hack squat 6 25 kilo plates aside for 10 reps.
That sounds like hell.
yeah, it's good. I've gathered that's as much weight as I can get on the machine without having like the thin powerlifting weights. So I'll have to seek out a gym that has both of those things, which is really hard. And I want to hit under 90 in golf, like regularly, like not just once. I don't know what that means. Yeah, well, it's like when you start out playing golf, you don't score because you could hit like fucking over 150 shots.
Yeah.
Usually par on a golf course is about 74 to 78. So that means like that's the score that it should take to complete the course. So I'm hitting between 90 and 100, which is 1 over, 2 over every hole. Yeah. So yeah, by the end of the year, it's like 1 over every second hole or something like that. Yeah, which is a big improvement. So that's what the golf people do. Yeah. So yeah,
learning something.
yeah, and that's more because it's a hobby that's not related to work. Yeah, because sometimes working out feels like a job that I've already spoken about. So like I thought I need something that's not work related, that's still kind of challenging. Yeah, still kind of piques my values. Yeah, trying to grow and improve and be successful in my eyes. So yeah,
I like it.
So yeah, it's cool. Just getting back in the swing of things with training. So, which we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
Not training in general, but
Yeah, so we should probably talk about like the actual topic.
Yeah, so if
you
you
guys
are still here, thank you.
Tam just put like the little
It's
like
just such
podcast
a
starts
conducive
now.
space to chat in.
And we haven't seen each other in like 5 weeks.
So we do apologise about that, but we'll get into the meat and nuts of it now.
Yeah, so the topic for today is specifically glute training.
Mm-hmm.
So those of you who haven't seen it, we've got a resource up at the moment. It's been up for a little while, but we're kind of like up-leveling our resources at the moment. So there might be some adjustments coming, but we've got the glute guide. So if you haven't seen it, go over there and look at it. It's not a training program, it's a guide. Yep. But basically what we wanted to do with this episode is just give you a little bit more context. It's something I think that just gets like butchered a lot online as well, in terms of like people just making up shit and whatever when it comes to training, specifically the glutes. It's a question a lot of my clients ask. I actually had one of my clients, I think it was towards the end of the last year, like message me and she's like, I know we're training my glutes right now, but is there anything more that we could be doing? I say there's a lot of stuff online that we're not doing. Do we need to do any of that stuff? So I think it's just something that gets maybe like over hyped or complicated to make it sound sexy and cool. So I guess like we want to just bring it back to the fundamentals. What do you guys need to think about? How do you need to go about, putting together a program or some training considerations for yourself to actually build your glutes and do that successfully? Yeah,
I think probably the best place to start is to understand that like most people that have like a develop, because most people are gauging their assumptions or conceptions on training glutes based off people on Instagram and social media. Yeah. They see someone with like a really good physique, they've got nice glutes or just a favorable body part, and then they're just like, well, whatever you do right, whatever they're doing right now is the reason why they have what they have. Yeah. Now, what we need to understand first is when you look at a physique and they have desirable features that you want, everything that they've done from the first time they've lifted a weight up until now is the reason why they look the way they look.
Yeah.
So some of these people, some of these athletes are, been training for, 5, 10, 15 years. So we've got to understand that like a lot of the stuff that they've probably done that we're always preaching, it's like they've already mastered that stuff. And it's probably the reason why they have the degree of development that they've got. And then it's like, it's like anything, you get too smart on a topic or you just know the fundamentals and everything. You start to go off on these little tangents of just shit that's like overcomplicating things that doesn't really fucking matter when you look at like, are you doing all of this stuff first?
Yeah.
It's like, we can go off on this little rabbit hole here, but it's like, are you still doing all this stuff? Because if you're not doing all this stuff or you haven't, you're not really going to get the goal, the desired outcome. So in a lot of cases, like these people that are doing these like movements that are just like, entertaining and, there's probably more sensation than there is an appropriate stimulus for growth. It's all just circus shit because it's entertaining to watch. And if you've got an audience and you've got a good physique, they're like, well, I'm going to watch this and I think that this movement's the secret. When really it's, looking at, well, the glutes comprise of like, 3 muscles. It's like the biggest one we obviously want to train the most. And it's like, it's responsible for X, Y, and Z. So we need to train it in all of these positions to do that and do it consistently. It's like, that doesn't sound exciting.
That's not exciting. Yeah, that sounds boring and simple. And
like, so if like X influencer said, well, you just need to hip flex and hip extend and load it in all these different fashions, that their audience is going to be like, oh, okay, well, that's it. Yeah. So we've got to complicate shit to make sure that it's exciting and keeps people coming back.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's just capitalizing on people who don't know any better. And like, that's what we're here to do, is like make sure you guys know better so you don't fall for that shit. Yeah,
and do the stuff, do the due diligence at the start and build the foundation. And, what we say, like, time is finite and so is effort. Right? So we don't have an infinite supply of those things. So we want to make sure that when people are coming into the gym, they've got obviously, a good idea of what they're about to do. They want to, not second guess themselves, and they want to get the best return on the time and effort, so that we're not wasting that stuff.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, there's movements and things that people are doing that, they probably could get a better return. Just approaching training through a different lens.
Yeah.
Which is why we're here and why we do what we do.
Yeah. I think it's also important to just remind you guys that we are primarily going to be talking about programming, I guess, look at it through that lens. But there's also like our other pillars that come into it. So like nothing stands in isolation. So there is like nutrition considerations and obviously like execution and training considerations. So just be mindful of that. Like this isn't where it ends. It's just a good starting point for you.
Yeah. And so everything that we talk about today in training this particular muscle group carries over to every muscle group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because they're all made the same.
Yeah.
You know, from a composition perspective. Like, yeah, they're different. They've got different shapes. So for the nerds out there that just heard me say that, it's like, they're like, no, that's not right. It's like there's different shapes and, you know, I guess they're arranged differently. But it's like when you look at the actual muscle tissue, it's like it's all the same. You know, so yeah, the compositions of fast and slow twitch fibers are a little bit different and we might need to change training accordingly for that. But it's like how we approach it is the same. It's like we need to stimulate it. We need to overload it. We need to feed it. We need to rest it. We need to we need to log our results and, you know, we need to do that on a repetitive basis. It's like, you know, most of the time we do that with every muscle group. We're going to be ticking the boxes with, you know, developing it to a level that's satisfactory for said client.
Yeah.
So where do we start here? Like, I can go anywhere with this. Like, I was thinking about it. It's like, how do I approach this? I think what would be maybe a cool thing to do is start with posture and positioning. You know, because if I look at you tell me for your typical clients, or even the clients that you don't work with that you feel like you could work with, like sit within your demographic. I feel like a lot of them are trying to assume it, like they want this like, you know, hourglass kind of physique. And when they go into the gym, like they're putting themselves in positions that they think are really trying to emphasize that. Like I just think of this like hyperkyphotic posture. Yeah. You know, where it's like, you know, we've got like this, you know, overextended kind of spine. We've got like, you know, trying to like stick the bum out with everything that we do. You know, there's no kind of compression or like activation in the abs or there's weakness there. And we're going into the gym trying to squat. And it's like, if we look at squat mechanics in general, it's like you can develop pretty decent glutes squatting, you know, if you do it
Learn
properly.
how to do it properly.
But having overextension in your back is going to not allow you to access sufficient depth. And it's going to be an unsafe position as well. So we're not going to be able to load the spine accordingly as well. So I think that like, you know, looking at mechanics and, you know, posture through movement, not just like standing posture, because that can obviously change, is a really important thing to consider. Like just because you're trying to, like, I don't go into the gym training chest and just try and stick my chest out with everything that I do. Yeah. You know, it's like I need to look at the movement and go, okay, well, how can I access more of my chest in this particular exercise, and what are the moving parts involved in that? So you've got your shoulder, whatever. So we're not talking about chest today, but it's the same with the glutes. It's like, okay, so the spine, the hips, you know, the knees to a degree, like all of these things are coming into play. So we need to make sure that we're, I guess, like very proficient, you know, which is why we talk about one of our pillars in terms of like training, of like how to set yourselves up to access these, you know, glute fibers when we're working out.
Yeah, I think like especially with the person that we work with, it's one of the first things, like if it's I want to build my glutes, like that's the goal. And then when the training videos get sent through, you can see why that hasn't been happening, because the first thing that we need to do is regress everything so that they can get into a position where they can actually do that. So it's like teaching someone how to pull their rib cage down and tuck their pelvis and get into a neutral position through regress movements, because the barbell squat isn't doing it right now.
Yeah.
And even for me personally, like, I don't know if you remember, but do you remember that like block, like before and after that we had when I first started training with you?
Yeah, we just did like normal training.
And we just did normal training and just ate, and my legs like fucking exploded, and my glutes, like, it's ridiculous.
You actually had glutes?
It's ridiculous, yeah. And it's like nothing really changed apart from just like learning how to squat properly and move properly. And like my squat has always been something that, you know, we're fine tuning and stuff. And it's especially with like that spine position, hips, rib cage, pelvis, how I'm kind of sitting. And it's like as soon as I learned how to do that, they just fucking exploded. So I think that, again, like it's just something to be conscious of, because like unless someone's really bringing your attention to it, a lot of people aren't going to look at it through that lens.
Yeah, and I think there's like a couple of different ways like you can approach it, because like people are going to sit here and go, oh well, like, you know, I did lots of glute kickbacks, and you know that really kind of was the catalyst to, you know, getting the development in my glutes, and oh, I did this particular exercise and that was the catalyst too. It's like what you've probably done is just found a movement that's comfortable, that feels good for you, that you can kind of work hard in, and that's taken precedence over other movements that you could have done if you worked on, you know, things like your mechanics and your technique, and you know, maybe mentally as well, because like there's probably a lot of people that are a little bit scared to kind of like get under the bar, or like put a bar over their hips and you know, lift a substantial amount of weight. Like there's apprehension there. They might not have the support network, they might not have the right environment, or they might just like, you know, one of the fears that the people that we typically work with just don't know if that's the right thing to do, so they're second guessing themselves all the time. So there's a tremendous amount of value in just getting the fundamentals right, getting those foundational movements right, learning how to squat properly, learning how to hinge properly in this particular instance. You know, I've never really had to have like this, you know, like a glute protocol, you know, like this is what we do to grow your glutes. Like if we were to have a protocol for glutes and someone wanted to increase them, like it would be learn how to move properly, increase the frequency to an acceptable amount that person can take and recover, drive up the volume to a level that they can recover from to, or even just maybe slightly over at a certain point. And that's it. You know, from an oversimplification perspective, it's like they're the things that really would get the best bang for buck. Now, what improving your technique, and you know, like someone like yourself, for example, when we started working together, I was like, if you learn how to squat better, you're not only going to build better glutes, you're going to build better quads. You know, you're going to be stronger in your midsection. You know, you're obviously moving better, so the likelihood of you injuring yourself is significantly lower. You know, you're going to lunge better. You're going to perform better because we're putting loads on your back, and you know, it's a complicated exercise. So if you can complete that with competency, the simplest of exercises are going to be executed to, you know, a high degree of effort. You know, and then it's like, cool, like put someone in a position where they lift heavy loads with complex exercises too. It's like, it's a tremendous amount of effort being done there. And like that carries over as well. So there's other added benefits to, I guess, like, you know, doing the due diligence and like going, okay, well, let's work on my hinge. Let's work on my squat. Let's get this, you know, working best for me. 'Cause that's another thing as well. Like we all move differently, and it's like, okay, well, how can I now, you know, access this muscle tissue when I train, and, you know, perform to a degree of effort that's needed to create this stimulus for this cascade of growth that we're trying to, you know, to achieve.
Yeah, I think it's a good time to as well just direct you guys to like the progression regression resources that we have. So we've got like some articles and stuff up that you guys can go and look at, because that's kind of where you need to start if you're in a position where you don't really know whether or not you're moving well. Then go look at those articles, and they'll kind of take you through the models that we have to start you at the bottom and then build you back up.
Yeah, and I think there's many ways to approach this. Like if you're a trained athlete, like you would have like, you know, hinging and squatting and stuff like that in your program. You would probably have variations of exercises like split squats and lunges and stuff that can bias the glutes more so than something like the quads. Like obviously training a lot of bikini competitors this year, big quads aren't desirable. Some of the people that I'm working with, they already have like a bias towards larger quads, so we can put them in positions that, like, you know, I guess move the most of the tension away from the quads and move them towards the glutes. So that's when you would probably have all these other things in there. Like you could have some kickbacks, you could have some other exercises, like ones that make sense, right? Ones that are going to challenge that muscle that is responsible for that particular kind of action of the limb that you're moving. But if you're new to training, it's like you really would want to, you know, build that base. You know, it's like, think of it as the slab of a house. It's like you want that slab like thick, you want it set, you know, so that you can start adding on the frame and the bricks and levels to it too. You know,
well,
just
that's the
think of it
thing.
like that.
Like everyone kind of starts up here, and it's like you can't go up here if you haven't started and, you know, laid the foundations first.
Everyone wants to put the roof tiles on.
Yeah.
And it's like, we've got to just like, if you want to be in the game for a while, if you want to like achieve something special, if you want those extraordinary results, you know, the pictures, you know, on the influencers, the athletes, of all these people that you look at and you're like, fuck, like I just like I want that degree of development in my glutes, for example. It's like they're 9 times out of 10 doing that. And it's like the ones that aren't, unfortunately for you guys, they're just, you know, obviously genetically gifted and they just fall into positions where they can just work hard, or they're just like that muscle tissue is hyper responsive to just training in general.
So once we kind of got training, or I guess like knowing how to move down pat, where's the next place that you would go?
So it's like understanding exercise selection for glute training, and like, you know, just why we would pick some things, and even like how we might structure them over your week for your program. So I think it's easy to really conceptualize exercise selection when you understand like just how a muscle works. So a muscle has like generally kind of 2 points. It'll have a point that attaches like closer to the midline of the body, and that can attach across a larger kind of cross-sectional area, and it can attach in a smaller cross-sectional area depending on the muscle itself. And then it will kind of come back to another point, another attachment point that's away from the midline, you know, and it generally, what it will do is move a limb. And what we would want to do is to contract that muscle, take one point of the attachment point to the other side of the attachment point close together, because muscles are cylindrical. So they have lots of little fibers in them, and we want to make sure that to contract and shorten them, we're taking those origin and insertion points, they're called, together. Now, to train a muscle across that whole kind of lengthened position and shortened position, we can't do that in one exercise. You know, if it would be great if we could, but we can't, just because of like how resistance acts on our body in certain movements, in certain positions. We need to have a variety of exercises that challenge each portion. You know, so you don't necessarily train a muscle across that contractile range we call in a movement, but you can do it in a session and in a week. So there's exercises that will really kind of bias like that shortened position, you know, when you're contracting the muscles and you're generally in hip extension. And then there's movements that will challenge that lengthened position where, you know, we're kind of like flexed at the hip, you know, something like a front foot elevated split lunge with a forward torso lean. It's like that's really going to access that lengthened position of the glutes itself. And then something that can train the middle portion of the range where we're really, really strong as well. We can do that too. You know, so something just like a standard variation lunge, a high feet leg press, high narrow footed leg press. Those movements are really going to be able to put us in a position where like output is the goal, because we can lift a large amount of weight, and we're generally stronger in like that mid portion of the range. So once we kind of know that, it's like we can start to just program the exercises and stuff accordingly, or select movements that are going to challenge that muscle. Now it's harder to shorten a muscle than it is to lengthen it. So we're going to, like typically, we're going to be, you know, maybe wanting to shorten the muscle at the start of the session, you know, when we're less fatigued and stuff, something like, you know, some hip extension exercises, you know, barbell hip thrust is a really good one to start with maybe, or even just a complicated exercise like a squat, and, you know, really trying to get, you know, some hip flexion in the squat. So you don't necessarily need to get a lot of knee flexion in a squat, but you have to get a large degree of hip flexion. So some people can achieve hip flexion without a lot of knee flexion. Some people need to have both. You know, so you've just got to like, you know, pick the right tool for the job, right? And it's like, how are you put together? How do you move? What are your goals? It's not easy to sit there and say every single person should like squat ass to grass, or you know, something like that, or even just like, you know, 90 degree at the knee joint as well. We can't sit there and do that. So, you know, we want to pick a movement like that, and then just kind of like as the sessions go on, or as your workouts go on throughout the week, it's like just working in a variety of movements that are challenging that muscle across a, you know, that full contractile range. Like, you know, 45 degree hip extensions are a really good one. Some lunges and lunge variations like we just spoke about, and then some kickback variations that kind of go with the fiber orientation of the glute itself. You know, so it's like just kicking backwards arbitrarily or kicking out sideways, you know, doesn't line up with the fiber orientation of the muscle. So we're not going to effectively train that muscle. It's no different to a bicep curl. Like it's a, you know, like it attaches like here and here, you know, or sorry for the guys, like it's just like parallel, you know, so just think of it as like running lines, straight, parallel. So if I try to like turn to an angle that's like not parallel to the tension, it's like I'm not training that bicep effectively. I'll train a little bit, but I'll probably beat the shit out of my elbow at the same time. So it's like we're kind of doing that, or a lot of people are doing that. When they put the bands on, when they do lots of these abduction exercises, when they sit forward on the adductor machine and push out, it's like you're not training your glutes. You're training other muscles that are around the glute, and it makes you feel like you're training your glutes, and you're just like getting sensation from something else. You know, so we need to be very, very methodical with how we do that. Other than that, without oversimplifying it, but trying to, just so the take homes are really important, are there. It's like put yourself in a position where you can like just overload that stimulus over time. You know, so we talk about it all the time. It's like programming. You know, I think that having a program is a tremendous thing for, you know, 90% of the population, outside of just like hyper advanced athletes. I think that they're just trained enough to train.
Yeah.
And most of them have a program. They just vary maybe 15% of their program. It's like the other 85% is the same. It's like I've got the movements that I'm good at, that feel good for me, that target the tissue that I'm after, and I'm just going to try and lift more than I did last month and the month before. Not necessarily workout to workout. It's not always going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you're new to training, you're going to get that linear increase in growth. And I think if you're always working on your form, you're logging your performance and stuff, and you're reflecting on how you train. You know, how did that rep feel in terms of that technique? How did that set feel in terms of overall performance? You know, how did I perform over a session? And like, what am I going to pick next week to overload?
Yeah.
You know, I think if you come with that mindset with anything, you're going to get the best results.
Can't really go wrong.
No.
Yeah, I think especially like when it comes to, you know, training your glutes or your lower body, obviously like the bands, like we've spoken about, the booty bands and the kickbacks and the adductions and all of that. It's like if we think about what we just spoke about, getting better over time and adding load and, you know, progressively improving on a week-to-week basis, and then you think about what you're doing with a band every single week, it's like those two don't work. Like they don't they don't complement each other, because you can't do that with a band. You can't overload. You can't get stronger. You can't manage that or measure that in a way that allows you to see that you're improving on a week-to-week basis. So you can then start to question, like, is this booty band circuit that I'm doing right now actually productive? Is it, you know, moving me towards that goalpost, because it doesn't fall in line with what I should be doing?
Yeah, the band thing is interesting, because I feel like it's a crutch for someone who either doesn't know how to improve the way they move or doesn't want to put the work in to lay that foundation that we spoke about. It's like, you know, when you didn't know anything about squatting, like think about before we even did any squat modules and anything about mechanics, the thing we did to fix someone's squat, always put heels.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Or put weights under their heels.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't actually know what the fuck's wrong with your squat,
but I'm just going to do
I'm just going to throw weights under your heels and hopefully it works out. It's like a band is the same thing.
Well, I think a band as well is like, it adds that element of sensation.
Of course it does.
So you can feel it. So you think that that's enough to kind of like
100%.
tick that box. So like that's probably why a lot of people lean towards it, because it feels like it's hard. So it must be doing something. Yeah.
And it's like glutes help push legs out. So if band goes on, more glutes, because glutes push legs out. And it's like, it's not, I can see where people went with that, but it's not going to fix everything, because people have really good glutes that don't use any bands. I've never used a band in a glute environment with any of my clients.
Yeah.
So it's like there's something to that, and it's like all my clients, most of them squat really well, hinge really well, move really well. So I think there's more to that, and it's like build that foundation, then use all this other stuff if you need to later.
Yeah.
You know, rather than just like going straight to the band. Even just thinking about like, it's hard because like as a trainee, you're not going to go and want to have a look at, you know, muscles, bones, and, you know, where the best positions are and stuff. But it's like when you actually do kind of dive down that rabbit hole a little bit, it's like you can see it's very simple, you know, just with like how to access the best positions for your glutes. It's like most people, like, for example, think it's like wider stance, you know, abducted hip position. And it's actually the complete opposite when you look at where, you know, like we spoke about before, that muscle shape, like where those fibers kind of attach from origin to insertion. It's like a narrow foot position is actually better, you know, to access your glutes. But then, you know, the conflicting information is, well, we've got to be team full ROM, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, well, if I go with a narrow foot position and I try to squat, I'm not going to get a lot of ROM, so I'm shit in the gym and people are going to make fun of me. But it's like, are you actually working the ROM of that muscle that you're targeting? And it's like, you are, but it doesn't look like you are. So as you can see, we start to fall into these like conflicting
biases,
kind of, well, you're just conflicting mindsets. It's like, I need to make sure I bury myself on my squat so that I'm cool and I can put on Instagram and be part of the Team Full ROM crew. But then it's like, I actually need to make sure that I can complete the exercise and target the tissue to build the physique I want. You know, so it's like, I'm more towards that. I'm more towards like, you just go in the gym and do what you need to do.
Yeah.
You know, don't worry about like all these expectations of other people. It's like, if you have a clear intention of what your session is and you have a clear understanding of why, it's like, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
You should be able to just go in there and not have to even just like mentally justify it to yourself because of like your, like all the peers around you, like looking at you going, oh, why are you doing this exercise or something, which is a huge pressure in my opinion. And I think that's part of the reason why people conform to these like kickbacks and all this stuff. It's just like, oh, other people do it. So it's like, it's an acceptance thing. And it's like, yeah, but it's not effective.
Yeah.
You could do something else that's more effective. Like, would you take like the yellow pill, which is like, do what everybody else does and you might not get those results? Or would you take, you know, the blue pill, which is like, do things properly and get the outcomes that you want, but it might take a tiny bit longer. It actually doesn't even take that much longer. It's just,
well, it would take it actually takes faster because
but it just goes against the grain.
Yeah.
You know, the blue pill goes against the grain and it's like, you know, I just take the blue pill.
Yeah.
Just do what I need to do to get what I need to get.
Yeah.
You know, in the best and most efficient way possible.
Yeah. So if we kind of got like execution and training down pat, we've had to think about exercise selection. I think the next place to go is like, you know, frequency and volume. So like how often, like how do we kind of structure that over the course of, you know, maybe a training day, a training week? Obviously taking into account things like recovery as well, as a good starting place for someone.
Worst time to have a drink.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think this is where the nuance of like coaching comes into it because, you know, it's going to be training age specific. It's going to be development specific. You know, some people are going to want like, you know, some people are going to need to make a large amount of progress. Like you know, when we first started, if you came to me and said like, hey, like my glutes are a big deal. So it's like, okay, well, we've got a bit of work to do here because the development is minimal at the moment. Right. Where if you came to me now and it's like, hey, I want to train my glutes. It's like, okay, cool. Well, that's like, how we approach those two things is completely different.
Yeah, they need fuck all right now, hey?
Well, they do because you know how to move well.
Yeah.
So it's like you're trained enough now to get the most out of least in most instances. Like still probably in that intermediate, but moving from intermediate to advanced. Yeah. You know, like just in terms of training age and stuff like that. So there's a sweet spot there where it's like, cool, you need enough volume to extract the stimulus that you need, but you don't need too much because like you've practiced a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, well, how we approach that is probably just like, you know, maybe 2 times a week you can train, you know, anywhere from, in my opinion, 10 to 20 sets per week. Like you would probably do lesser. And we would just like work off like your performance and the results.
Yeah.
In terms of like a newer client, it's like, I don't know, I'm kind of all about like frequent exposure. I think that frequent exposure is practice. I think it's just about getting the dose right. So it's like, would I hammer a new trainee with like 20 to 25 sets per week on, you know, glute specific work? Probably not just yet, but it would be nice to just like go, hey, you know, here's 6 sets in a session. You're not going to get tired. You're not going to get overworked, but you're going to learn the skill and practice a lot. And then we're going to do it maybe 2 days later and then 2 days later, you know, so there's going to be a larger amount of glute work over the week, but not concentrated in the session, for example.
Yeah.
Or you might do 6 sets on one and then 4 on one and then 2 on the other. So it's like only 12 exposures a week. But it's like they're getting practice, you know, more frequently. So in terms of like optimal frequency, it's still volume specific. Like if you match the volumes, like you're going to get a similar amount of growth. So if I did like 15 sets of glutes in one session and you did and I did then 15 sets over a week in 3 sessions, I'm going to get the same or similar degree of growth, providing the variables are the same. The hard part is like, I don't know if you've done a session where you do all glutes and only glutes. It's like you fade, your performance fades, you know, after a certain amount, and that's going to differ from person to person too. So like I like the 12 set principle, that 10 to 12, you know, exposures in a session. I think that anything beyond that, there's probably a diminishing return effect. There's a lot of junk volume going on just in terms of like, could I have not performed this later in the week and do it better?
Yeah.
So could that not lead to better results over time? Like that's the question that we need to ask ourselves. So yeah, I think that, you know, if you're really trying to develop your glutes and they're a focus, more exposures in the week would be good. I think 2 is the sweet spot for most people. I don't think they need to do any more than that. If you're a new trainee and you don't know how to move, though, it might be more valuable. And then, yeah, it's just about like tracking your results and, you know, working out what's effective. You know, is this amount of work for this person with this amount of calories in their lifestyle good? Sweet. Glutes are going up and circumference performance in the gym's high. Sweet. Keep going. If it's not, let's start to troubleshoot. Do they need more work? Do they need less? Are they filling up their recovery jug, you know, with all of the other things, sleep, hydration, food, work and life stress, you know, all those things matter. So yeah, that's probably how I would approach that.
Again, like that's going to be really hard to manage if you're not actually tracking all that data. So again, it comes back to like having the program, having the structure there so you can actually monitor what's happening and like conclude that you're making progress. Because otherwise you're just kind of like winging it and guessing it and probably again basing things off sensation and how you're feeling. Yeah.
I mean, we've banged on the drum of tracking your results and following a program so much, but it's just because it's really like it's quantifiable and we can really start to understand how someone works and start to build that profile for them and be like, okay, so this is how glute training and muscle development for everything works for this person. Like how you develop your muscles and how you train is totally different to how I would approach it for another client. You know, I'm not just going to be like, well, this is the glute program and this is how we train to do that. You know, we're all going to respond in a different fashion to a degree. It's just like, you know, when we're assessing how someone moves in the gym, it's like, we know what we're supposed to be looking for and that's quite standardized. You know, so after that, if you're not tracking your results, it's like, how do you make a decision that when things aren't going well? You know, when you've hit this plateau and when you're not achieving the results that you want, it's like, where do you frame your decision making from?
Yeah, and like you can't actually think about anything like without being emotionally attached to it because you don't have anything to read off. So it's like you can look at the data and actually conclude things, or you can get emotionally invested and just kind of like guess what needs to happen next because you can't see it. So even thinking about something like effort, which we haven't spoken about yet, it's like you've got everything in alignment. You've got the program, you know how to move, but you're not training hard enough. It's like, how are you going to look at that and actually reflect on that and think about that critically if you can't see that?
Yeah. There's like, to give you guys a bit of an insight into like the decision-making process for someone who's not making progress. It's like you look at the technique of the movement. If the technique of the movement's good, you now look at their recovery capacity. Okay, the recovery capacity is not where it needs to be. That's not just, okay, cool, let's work on that. That involves what's going on in work, what's going on in your family life, how much sleep you're getting, how much water you're drinking per day, or how much fluid, your calories, maybe the distribution of them. Then it's like, okay, how are you feeling yourself before your session? You know, how are you approaching your workout? So there's all of those things. Then after that, it's like, okay, maybe we need to do more work in this area. Maybe we need to do less. So I just went to so many different places. If someone's not recording these things, then how do you know what decision to make? That's when people go, I'm not going to do this exercise. This exercise doesn't work for me. And I'm going to pick X influencers, glute, kickback, banded, fucking BFR bullshit movement on a Bosu ball.
Yeah.
Because I need to try something different now. Yeah. When really it's like there's probably a variable that you're not covering that you need to, or there's, you know, some technique issues that we need to refine to put you in a more comfortable position to get output, to accrue that stimulus to, you know, kind of drive these adaptations like we always talk about. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you have to track your progress, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. Is there anywhere else that you would go? Is there anything that we haven't like kind of touched on that stands out?
Look, I think it, like you mentioned it before, it's just like working hard. I think that, you know, I have never met someone who works hard and doesn't get good results. Like it's one of those things, like you can obviously, you know, work hard and do it in an improper fashion. And you'll still get results, but you could probably have gotten better results and you could probably use some of that effort like elsewhere and maybe it could have served you somewhere else better too. So it's like there's tremendous value in learning how to work hard and learning how to push yourself. And you've got to do it in certain situations to learn what you're capable of. So that's where, training with people who know how to train, or just, being exposed in safe positions to, train hard. So it's about selecting the exercises to get that person to learn how to work hard. Like, for a glute specific circumstance, like, I probably wouldn't get someone to really kind of push to 0 reps in reserve on something like a barbell hip thrust or something. It's just like, it just kind of, the risk just really starts to increase. And it's like, it just has sprained SI joint written all over it. But it's like, could you not, use like a machine, if they have access to a machine hip thrust, like that's a guided range of motion. It's a fixed position. We've got lots of stability there. There's lots of output. Could you not put them, with a front foot elevation, where they can kind of like hold on to the rack on the squat rack, and hold the dumbbell or something, and it's like, cool, you just rep this out until you can't rep anymore. It's like, that's, could you not lunge with a forward torso lean and do that for 2 minutes, just 2 minutes straight, and it's like you can really start to develop that degree of effort and conditioning for a person. And I think that that's going to cross over to all of their lifts and all of their movements, because we've got like this, it's like a warning light. It's just when things start to get hard, it's like that, the feedback to the brain's like, hey, this hurts. This is uncomfortable. And then your brain's like, okay, we can overcome this if we want to. So that's where you've got to have that mental capacity to go, all right, this is when the set's starting. This is when the stimulus is actually starting to accrue. Then there's another warning light where it's like, hey, we're really pushing it now. Like, there's not much left. And most people, like, they don't get to that light, but when they do, they stop. There's still 10-15% left. And that's what you need to learn. To train hard and get the best results. It's like, no, there's more. And I'm going to fucking bury myself because I'm safe. I'm safe. There's nothing can happen to me in this position. If I'm lunging, I can fall over. I can just lie on the floor. I'm not going to fall over, but it's like I can just stop. I can drop the weights. I can just drop the weights and do a body weight. If I'm in the hip thrust machine, I can just stop. If I'm in a barbell hip thrust, like I could twist it, I could, and I could hurt myself. So there's going to be feedback to your brain saying, hey, don't do that because that's dangerous. So it's an important thing. It's like environment specific, it's movement specific, it's variable specific, it's person specific.
Well, the reason I was laughing is because I think it was just before the break when I went on the hack squat for the first time. And I was like, I'm going to do this with the intent to see how far I can actually push myself before I need to stop, like before I physically need to stop and actually like get to that point. And I think a lot of people will just be shocked by like how much you get in your own way and how much that is like a skill and a learnt, it's a learnt experience that you need to continuously practice. Because like you said, like you will get that alarm signal where it's like, we're tapping out now. And I think to be able to mentally push yourself past that point and like have that dialogue within yourself to be able to go to that next level, like that takes practice. And obviously like it's something that comes with experience, but unless you're willing to go into the gym with that intent and purpose to attempt that, then like you're always going to kind of like leave something on the table. And
it's like I always like try and search for just other gyms with people who train hard, because I'm like, if I don't train to that level, I know that level exists. I say that all the time. I'm like, I go and look, like I haven't really been fortunate enough to kind of train with someone who like is just way beyond me. Just because of like, I got into it just by myself. Like I didn't have any friends who were interested in training, so I didn't know what the level was. And then I met some people and I'm like, fuck, like that level exists. So then I was like, that's the standard. And then unfortunately now it's just like, online coach, just go to the local gym. And it's like, there's no one there that's really like kind of pushing the needle. So I'm like, okay, well I need to go somewhere that has someone who pushes the needle and the standard, because I need to see if I can meet that. And I like, that's how I work, and then if I've got an opportunity, like when Alex come to train with us, I'm like, I'm fucking burying you on this hack squat, bro. I'm like, I don't care what Ben has for your fucking rep and reserve. It's like, I'm going to teach you a place, well, not how to train. I'm going to teach you a place that you don't even know exists. Like for himself. You know, it's like, I don't need him to like put the same weight on as me and lift the same and do all that. It's like, I need you to go somewhere which your body and your brain don't even know you have.
Yeah.
You know, it's like having a superpower. It's like, and you just haven't tapped into it yet. It's like, you know, it's like, I know you've got more than 5 reps left. Let's go. You know, and then that's going to, like, obviously you won't do that every week, but it's like, you know what you're capable of. You know, for people at home, it's like, oh, I don't know how to achieve that. It's like, do as many push-ups as you can.
Yeah, like just try
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Like, but don't worry about what your chest feels like. Worry about what your brain's telling your body. And it's like, okay, so take that to every other exercise.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm getting this, like, oh, fuck, I don't know if there's much left here. I'll try more. Okay, done. Not like, oh, I stopped because it hurt my muscles. And it's like, that's just a little bit of lactic acid accumulation. Like, generally not. It's not doctor's advice, you know, obviously. But in a lot of cases, it's just like, I felt that tingling feeling.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you've got way more to go.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that that's an important thing. And then the one thing I thought about when you were talking then was like, and it leads on to this conversation, like, you know, I've talked about like output and stability, and it's like those two things really go hand in hand. So it's like the more stable position we're in, usually the harder we can train, because if we're unstable, there's messages going to the brain saying this is dangerous. So we're not going to recruit as much muscle so that we don't hurt ourselves. So if I go in a leg extension, for example, I'm going to fucking tear that thing apart because there's lots of stability. I can pull myself into the seat. You know, it's a fixed range of motion. It can't go left, right. It can just go up and down. Same with the leg press. Now, what a lot of females have specifically, even males in general, like probably everybody, is like they don't have that stability. They haven't fortified their body. So their actual hips and stuff are quite weak, and they don't know how to stabilize themselves. So when they get under a bar, or when they put a barbell over the hips or something, it's like that hub of their body already is weak and unstable. So think about the message that's going to the brain, to the muscle to recruit. It's like, it's going to be suboptimal. It's not going to be maximal. So there's a tremendous amount of like, I guess, like just due diligence in terms of like, you know, seeing how your hips move, you know, seeing if we can kind of like, you know, like the whole like prescripts Jordan Shallow thing of just like, you know, just lift one leg up off the ground, see if you can balance on it. It's like, if you can't do that, why put a barbell on your back?
Oh yeah.
You know, it's like, you're not going to get a sufficient stimulus to grow these muscles and stuff like that. Like if you put a bar on your back, like I'm not saying avoid it, but it's like, you know, work on both of those things so that at some point you can train hard.
Yeah.
You know, and get the best return. You know, you've got this effort, and it's like, cool, I'm going to spend this much effort today, but and it's going to cost me this much time, but I'm going to get this reward. You know, and I think that like if you have a good approach to training, you know, with your preparative kind of phase before you warm up, and then you warm up, and then how you approach your training and how your training's set up, it's like that's the best way to do it. You know. Yeah. So
yeah, and then I guess like that's going to come back to what we spoke about with exercise selection, and like why you would choose a machine over a barbell, over cables, over dumbbells.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know, generally the focus of the session would be at the start. So, you know, if it's a glute focused session, you would want the glutes to be done at the start. Then you might do some hamstrings and calves after that or something, for, you know, for example's sake. And then, you know, you would probably pick the most complicated exercise at you know, within the first half of the session, just because fatigue is low and concentration is high. So, you know, skill and the ability to coordinate your body is at an all-time high. So, you know, your ability to perform the exercise to its greatest competency is there. And then, you know, there's nuances within that too. It's like, you know, you might, you know, just get some blood and circulation into that area. You know, you might do some, you know, very targeted kickbacks before you do, you know, your hip thrust or something, just to get some circulation, get some movement in the hips. And you might do some adductors just to kind of open up, abduction, to just open up the hips and kind of just get some stuff moving. It's not essentially going to target the area, but it's like, cool, we're working this area. Let's just get that moving. And then you might just go straight into, like your core part of the session, which would be a squat or a good morning or a Romanian deadlift, or, you know, a variation of those things. And then you just kind of stack them in an order where it's like, once the fatigue drops, we start moving to fixed guided movements that are easy to execute when we're fatigued.
Yeah.
You know, so that's generally the best approach for someone who's trying to design a program for physique development.
Yeah, which is like pretty much exactly how the guide itself is put together. So I'm going to say it again, like if you haven't been there, go and have a look. I'm pretty sure it starts off with something like a hip opener, hip stability exercise, and then takes you through some other stuff. So if you go over to the website, over to, I think it's under resources, Tam, you'll be able to find that there. You'll be able to download it and have yourself an actual program template as well. So definitely go and check that one out. I think that's pretty much everything.
Yeah, I think we covered everything. Like, obviously, you know, people are going to be like, well, what's the best exercise? And, you know, what am I going to pick? And those kind of things. That's going to be a very hard thing to unpack and explain to everybody. But I think if you just get really good at hip flexion and hip extension, I don't think you need to do much else. Like, I think if you just learn how to move properly and you can hip flex and extend, you know, to the greatest of your ability, and you can squat well, there's not much else that's going to get in the way. Like, those, being able to do those things is going to cross over to everything else. Then it's just like, you know, picking certain things to serve a certain purpose.
Yeah, so I think if we kind of like wrap up what we spoke about, it's like learn how to move well, do those things that you just spoke about, have a program, track your progress, train hard.
That's the key to pretty much everything.
Yeah.
But it's like, and don't get sucked into like, you know, most gimmicky things. Like, remember that those people showing you, like, it's a lifetime of work of learning how to hip extend and flex and extend, learning how to squat, you know, doing all of those things. Like, every single thing is why they look the way they look now. Not just this is the secret. It's like, there's no secret. It's just that they look this way as a reflection of 20 years of training, for example. Yeah, so hopefully we've managed to like simplify that for you guys, give you some things to think about. And again, resource is over on our website, so you guys can head over there. Yeah, and questions are good. So if you guys are unsure on things, obviously want to unpack things a little bit further, like, you know, comments, you know, Instagram, YouTube, those kind of things, we're happy to unpack things a little bit further. We've obviously gone through programming and like, you know, how to approach things like that in other episodes. So just make your way to your previous episodes of the podcast too, because what we've talked about today, each part of it, we've unpacked in, you know, like 40 to 60 minutes just going in on that. So if you want to nerd out a little bit more and this is your first exposure, there's plenty of more episodes to eat up. So.
Sweet.
So STCfit.com for all your cool stuff there, for the free resources that we were talking about. Obviously you can look into coaching as well. So you click on the coaching tab, see what the coaching services are on offer. I'm at Jason Galea _STC on Instagram if you guys want to follow me. Nat is
at Nat Jurek, STCfit.
And then you've got STCfit, obviously. And then if you're a coach as well as a gym nerd, head to at STCfit Learning as well for all your kind of PT orientated stuff too.
Sweet.
Okay, that's it. Good chat.
See you guys in a fortnight.
See you guys.